Captain Jake Harrison stood at the main screen of the Deep Space Station, Titan's Eye. The station floated at the edge of human space, watching for any signs of trouble. Jake had been doing this job for 10 years, and most days were quiet and boring. Today was different. "Captain, we're getting something strange," said Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her seat at the communications desk. Her voice was tight with worry. "It's a big signal coming from deep space." "Really big." Jake walked over to look at her screen. Numbers made his heart beat faster. "How big are we talking about?" "Bigger than anything we've ever seen, sir. The power behind this signal could light up a whole star system." Commander Rick Sullivan, the station's military officer, looked up from his tactical display. "Sir, this isn't random space noise. Someone is trying to talk to us. Someone with technology way beyond ours." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. For 50 years, humans had been expanding into space, building colonies and stations like this one. They had always wondered when they might meet other intelligent life. Now it seemed that day had come. "Put it through the main speakers," Jake ordered. The voice that came through was not human, but the station's computers translated it into English. The voice was deep and cold, with no emotion at all. "People of Earth, we are the Corvani Empire. We rule over 10,000 worlds and 800 billion subjects. We have watched your species spread through space like a disease. Your aggressive expansion ends now." Amy's hands shook as she worked at her controls. "Sir, this signal is being sent to every human colony and station at the same time. Everyone is hearing this." The alien voice continued. "We have conquered species far more advanced than yours. The Zenith Collective fell in 6 months. The Bruton warriors surrendered after one battle. You have no hope of resistance." Jake grabbed the arms of his chair. The Brutons were warriors? If they had surrendered to these Corvani, what chance did humans have? "You will surrender completely within 72 standard hours. Your ships will be destroyed. Your colonies will be absorbed into our empire. Your people will serve us or die. This is your final warning." The signal cut off, leaving the station in terrible silence. Jake looked around at his crew. Amy was staring at her screen in shock. Rick was already pulling up military databases, trying to find any information about these Corvani. "Get me Earth Command," Jake said. "Emergency priority." While Amy worked to connect the call, Jake thought about what they had just heard. 10,000 worlds, 800 billion subjects. The human race had about 12 billion people spread across maybe 50 colonies. The numbers were impossible to fight against. "Earth Command is responding, sir," Amy said. "They're connecting. You to the President." The screen flickered, and President Linda Carter appeared. She looked calm, which surprised Jake. Behind her, he could see other important people moving around quickly. "Captain Harrison," the President said, "we received the same message." "What's your assessment?" "Ma'am, if these aliens are telling the truth, we're in serious trouble. The power behind their signal alone shows technology we can't match." "We're gathering all our military leaders," President Carter said. "Admiral Ben Torres is reviewing our defensive capabilities. Defense Secretary Carl Mason is coordinating with our colonies. We need to know exactly what we're facing." As if the aliens had heard them, space around the station suddenly lit up with bright energy. Jake watched in horror as Proxima Station, humanity's furthest outpost, simply vanished. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone, destroyed by some kind of energy beam from light years away. "They just killed 3,000 people," Rick said, his voice barely a whisper. "From across the galaxy, in seconds." Amy was crying now. How do we fight something like that? Jake wanted to comfort her, but he had no words. The demonstration had been clear. The Corvani could destroy any human settlement whenever they wanted. The 72-hour deadline was not a negotiation. It was a countdown to extinction. President Carter, Jake said, "With respect, ma'am, we need to start evacuation procedures. Get people to the deep colonies, somewhere these aliens might not. Find them." The president nodded slowly. "Captain, I want you to monitor all space around your station. If you see anything at all, report it immediately." "Yes, ma'am. But what are we going to do? Our biggest warships are like toys compared to what these aliens just showed us." President Carter was quiet for a moment. Then she said something. That confused Jake. "Captain, sometimes the strongest-looking enemy has the biggest weaknesses. Keep watching, keep listening, and trust that Earth is not as helpless as it might seem." The call ended, leaving Jake alone with his crew and the growing fear that humanity had just 72 hours left to live. Outside the station, space looked the same as always, but now Jake knew that somewhere out there, an empire of unimaginable power was preparing to wipe out everything he had ever known. Amy turned to him with tears in her eyes. "Captain, what do we do now?" Jake looked at the empty space where Proxima Station had been. "We do our job. We watch. We listen. And we hope that our leaders know something we don't." But deep in his heart, Jake feared that hope was all they had left. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Helen Wright walked through corridors that most people on Earth did not know existed. The facility was called Deep Haven, and it had been built 50 years ago when Helen was just a young scientist. Now, at 73 years old, she was about to see if all their secret work had been worth it. "Status report," she said to Colonel Danny Pierce, who was waiting for her in the main control room. "All systems are green, Doctor." The moment that alien signal reached Earth, our automatic systems started powering up, just like you designed them to. Helen smiled. 50 years ago, she had been part of a small group of scientists who believed that humanity's expansion into space would eventually attract attention from other intelligent species. Most people had laughed at them. The government had only given them funding because they promised to also work on useful technology for Earth's space program. "Have you contacted the other sites?" Helen asked. "Yes, ma'am. General Alex Turner confirms that all 12 primary facilities are operational. Captain Steve Parker reports that our cargo ships are in position. Lieutenant Commander Kate Morgan says the civilian evacuation systems are ready." Helen nodded. The public knew about some of these things, but they thought the evacuation systems were for natural disasters. The cargo ships were supposed to be carrying supplies to the colonies. The research stations scattered around the solar system were supposed to be studying space weather and radiation. None of that was completely untrue. But it was not the whole truth either. What about the Genesis Protocol? Helen asked. Danny's face became serious. Dr. Peter Clark says the quantum singularity generators are charging as planned. All 15 installations are online. He estimates 6 hours until they reach full power. Helen felt a mix of pride and fear. The Genesis Protocol was their most dangerous creation. Each generator could create a small black hole that would tear apart anything nearby. They had placed these devices at strategic points throughout the solar system, hidden inside what looked like normal research stations. "Any word from the surface?" she asked. President Carter is playing her part perfectly. To everyone watching, including the aliens, Earth looks like it's preparing to surrender. Admiral Ben Torres is making speeches about how humanity can't possibly fight such a powerful enemy. Helen walked to the main display screen, which showed the entire solar system. Red dots marked the locations of their hidden weapons. Green dots showed where their disguised warships were waiting. Blue dots were the evacuation sites where millions of people could be kept safe. "You know," Danny said, "sometimes I wonder If we were wrong to keep this secret from so many people, even our own military leaders don't know the full scope of what we've built. Helen sighed. We talked about this many times over the years. If too many people knew, the secret would have gotten out. And if other species knew what we were really capable of, they might have attacked us before we were ready. A young technician approached them. Dr. Wright, we're getting reports from our listening posts. The alien fleet is moving toward Earth. Our estimate is about 50,000 ships. Helen smiled again. Only 50,000? They're not taking us very seriously. Danny looked shocked. Only 50,000? Doctor, our entire space navy has about 400 ships. Danny, you're still thinking like the old human military. Big ships, big guns, fight in straight lines. We've been planning for this day for 50 years. We know exactly how these Corvani fight because we've been listening to their communications and studying their tactics. Helen turned to another display that showed intercepted alien messages. Dr. Emma Stone's team has been studying their psychology. The Corvani are incredibly arrogant. They believe they're superior to everyone else in the galaxy. That arrogance makes them predictable. But their technology, Danny started, is very advanced, yes. But it's not their technology. Our intelligence shows that the Corvani Empire grew by conquering other species and taking their inventions. They're good at using other people's ideas, but they're not good at creating new ones. Helen walked to another section of the control room where Captain Greg Murphy was coordinating with their hidden ships. Status of our fleet? All 200 vessels are in position, Doctor. The Corvani scanners show them as space debris, or asteroids. Our adaptive stealth technology is working perfectly. 200 ships against 50,000, Danny muttered. I hope you know what you're doing. Helen looked at him seriously. Danny, you're still thinking in terms of old warfare. We're not going to line up our ships and shoot at theirs. We're going to use the one advantage we have that the Corvani don't expect, which is we're going to cheat. Across the room, another technician called out, Dr. Wright, we're getting confirmation from all our deep space assets. The network is fully operational. Helen nodded. The network was perhaps their greatest achievement. For decades, they had been placing hidden communication devices throughout human space and beyond. These devices used quantum entanglement to send messages instantly across any distance. The Corvani thought humans only had slow radio communications. But the truth was that every human colony and ship could coordinate perfectly in real time. Ma'am, Captain Murphy said, I'm getting reports that some of our colony governors are asking questions. They're wondering why they're receiving strange orders from Earth. Tell them it's part of the surrender process, Helen said. They need to move their populations to specific locations to make it easier for the aliens to count them. It was another lie, but a necessary one. The governors were actually moving their people to locations where hidden defense systems could protect them. Some colonies were being evacuated entirely. Their populations moved to secret facilities that the Corvani would never find. Danny looked at the countdown timer on the wall. 48 hours left. When do we reveal ourselves? When the Corvani fleet is exactly where we want them to be, Helen said. Dr. Stone's psychological profiles say they'll position themselves in a standard occupation formation, the same formation they've used to intimidate dozens of other species. And if they don't, Helen smiled one more time, then we have 12 backup plans. And if those don't work, we have backup plans for the backup plans. Danny, we've been preparing for this day for 50 years. We've thought of everything. As if to test her confidence, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. A technician called out, Corvani ships have entered the outer solar system. They're moving toward Earth exactly as predicted. Helen felt her heart racing, but she kept her voice calm. All stations, Begin final preparations. It's time to show these aliens what humans are really capable of. The greatest test in human history was about to begin. Fleet Admiral Vex Corvani stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and looked at the small blue planet ahead of him. In his 200 years of military service, he had conquered 47 different species. Earth would be number 48, and probably the easiest yet. Report, he commanded his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Drac Corvani. Sir, we have 50,000 ships in perfect formation. The human planet is completely surrounded. Their primitive vessels are fleeing in panic, just as expected. Vex Corvani nodded with satisfaction. The humans had maybe 400 small ships, and most of those were running away toward their outer colonies. It was pathetic compared to his mighty fleet. "Why are we bothering with this demonstration?" asked Drac Corvani. "We could simply destroy the planet from a safe distance and be done with it." "Because," Vex Corvani explained patiently, "the Empire requires examples. When other species see what happened to the humans, they will surrender immediately. It saves time and resources." The fleet admiral walked to his tactical display, which showed the positions of all his ships. They were arranged in the standard occupation formation that had worked perfectly for centuries. The biggest ships formed a circle around the planet, with smaller vessels filling the gaps. It was an impressive sight that had terrified every species that had ever seen it. "Sir," said the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the human leaders. They say they want to surrender." Vex Corvani laughed. "Already? The Brutans lasted 6 hours before they gave up. The Zenith Collective fought for 3 days. These humans are even weaker than we thought." On the surface of Earth, President Linda Carter sat in a room that had been prepared to look like a surrender meeting. Around her were General Tony Roberts, Admiral Susan Drake, and other leaders who all looked defeated and scared. But this was all an act. "Are you ready, Madam President?" asked General Roberts quietly. "As ready as we can be," she replied. "Lisa, is everything in position?" Commander Lisa Anderson, hidden in the Deep Haven facility, spoke through a secret communication device. "All systems are ready, Madam President. Captain Frank Miller confirms that our tactical computers have mapped every ship in their fleet. We know exactly where each one is." President Carter nodded and activated the public transmission to the alien fleet. "This is President Carter of Earth. We ... We cannot fight your powerful empire. We are prepared to discuss terms of surrender." On his flagship, Vex Corvani smiled with satisfaction. "Excellent. Order all ships to standard intimidation positions. I want these humans to see the full might of the Corvani Empire before they submit." His fleet began moving into an even tighter formation around Earth. Each ship took its assigned position with perfect precision. It was a dance they had performed many times before, and it never failed to break the spirit of their enemies. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "all ships are in position. The humans are completely surrounded." Vex Corvani activated his own transmission to Earth. "Humans of Earth, behold the power of the Corvani Empire. Your surrender is accepted. Prepare to be absorbed into our great civilization." But something was wrong. The fleet admiral noticed that his sensors were showing strange readings from various points in the solar system. "What are those energy signatures?" "Unknown, sir. They appear to be coming from the humans' research stations. Probably just their primitive science equipment powering down." Vex Corvani dismissed the readings. Human technology was so basic that it barely registered on Corvani instruments. What could they possibly have that would threaten the Empire? Down on Earth, Commander Henderson watched her displays with growing excitement. "All Genesis protocol. Stations report ready. Our hidden fleet is in position. The enemy is exactly where we want them." Captain Greg Murphy, coordinating the secret human ships, smiled grimly. 50,000 ships, all clustered together in predictable formations. They've made this almost too easy. Dr. Helen Wright, now in the final control room, looked at the countdown timer. 30 seconds to activation. All stations confirm ready status. Ready, came the response from 15 different locations throughout the solar system. Ready, confirmed the 200 hidden human ships. Ready, said the evacuation centers protecting millions of civilians dot above Earth. Vex Corvani was preparing to make his final victory speech when his sensor officer suddenly called out in alarm. Sir, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system. Power levels are off the charts. What? Where? The fleet admiral rushed to the sensor station. Everywhere, sir. The humans' research stations, the asteroid belt, even some of the outer planets. It's like they're powering up weapons, but that's impossible. Their technology is too primitive. Vex Corvani felt the first touch of uncertainty he had experienced in decades. Scan those positions again. Full analysis. But before his sensors could complete their scan, Dr. Wright gave the order that would change everything. All stations. Activate Genesis Protocol. All ships engage enemy targets. Operation Starfall begins now. Space around the Corvani fleet suddenly filled with impossible energies. The research stations revealed their true nature as quantum singularity generators, creating miniature black holes that began tearing apart nearby enemy ships. The fleeing human vessels dropped their disguises and opened fire with weapons that the Corvani had never seen before. Impossible! Vex Corvani shouted as his mighty fleet began to crumble around him. Their technology is primitive. Their ships are inferior. But his protests meant nothing as ship after ship disappeared into quantum distortions or was torn apart by human weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The perfect formation that had intimidated so many species became a trap, with ships too close together to avoid the spreading destruction. Sir, Drac Corvani called out in panic, we're losing ships faster than we can count them. Our shields are useless against these weapons. Vex Corvani stared at his tactical display in horror. The humans had not surrendered. They had lured his entire fleet into a carefully planned ambush. For the first time in 2 centuries, the Corvani Empire was losing a battle. Send a message to the Emperor, he ordered. Tell him we need immediate reinforcements. Tell him the humans are not what they seem. The battle for Earth's solar system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Commander Lisa Anderson watched from Deep Haven as the Corvani fleet, moments before so confident and threatening, began to fall apart in the face of humanity's hidden weapons. Genesis Protocol stations report full activation, called out Captain Greg Murphy. Quantum singularities are stable and effective. We're getting confirmed kills on enemy capital ships. Lisa looked at the tactical display and felt amazed by what she was seeing. The Corvani ships, with their advanced shields and armor, were being torn apart by weapons that attacked space itself. The Empire's technology was useless against gravitational forces that could crush metal like paper. Status of our fleet? She asked. All 200 ships are engaging successfully, reported Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Hayes. Captain Nicole Turner's squadron has destroyed an entire enemy battle group. Commander Paul Davis reports that the aliens can't even detect our ships until we're right on top of them. The human strategy was working perfectly. Instead of fighting the traditional space battle that the Corvani expected, humanity was using unconventional tactics that the Empire had never encountered. Ships appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished again before the enemy could respond. On his flagship, Fleet Admiral Vex Corvani was experiencing the worst defeat of his career. How many ships have we lost? He demanded. Over 15,000. "Sir," reported Dracorvani, his voice shaking, "and the number is growing every minute. Their weapons are destroying our vessels faster than we can count them." Vex Corvani stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His perfect formation had become a death trap. Ships were being pulled into impossible gravitational fields or struck by energy weapons that seemed to ignore his advanced shields. "Signal the fleet to break formation and scatter," he ordered. "We need to get away from these gravitational weapons." But even as his ships tried to escape, the human fleet pursued them. The disguised vessels that had been hiding throughout the solar system revealed themselves, attacking from directions that the Corvani had thought were safe. "Sir," called out the communications officer, "we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Human forces are attacking our outposts in 12 different star systems. They're using the same impossible weapons." Vex Corvani felt his blood turn cold. The humans had not just prepared to defend Earth, they had prepared to attack the Empire itself. Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Wright was coordinating the expanded assault. "Captain Steve Parker, status of our deep space operations?" "All hidden colonies are reporting successful attacks, Doctor. The cargo ships we positioned years ago have deployed weapon platforms throughout former Empire territory. The aliens never suspected that our supply runs were actually military operations." Helen smiled. "For 50 years, they had been preparing for this moment. Every cargo ship that had carried supplies to human colonies had also carried components for hidden weapons. Every research station had been equipped with quantum generators. Every evacuation drill had been practiced for coordinated military operations." "What about the Empire's response?" she asked Dr. Emma Stone, monitoring Alien. Communications looked up from her station. "They're in complete panic. Their psychology is exactly what we predicted. They've never faced an enemy that could match their technology, and they don't know how to adapt." The Corvani Empire's greatest weakness was becoming clear. After centuries of easy victories, they had become rigid in their thinking. They expected every battle to follow the same pattern: show overwhelming force, enemy surrenders, occupy the planet. When that pattern was broken, they had no idea what to do. "Sir," Dracorvani called out to his admiral, "the humans are using tactics we've never seen. They're not fighting like any species we've encountered before." "What do you mean?" Vex Corvani asked. "They're not trying to match our formations or our firepower. Instead, they're using their environment as a weapon. They're turning the laws of physics against us." Vex Corvani understood what his second-in-command meant. The Corvani way of war was based on having bigger ships and more powerful weapons. But the humans were using the structure of space itself as their weapon. How could you defend against an enemy that could create black holes wherever they wanted? "Admiral," called out the sensor officer, "we're detecting a massive energy buildup from the direction of Earth. It's bigger than anything we've seen so far." Lisa Anderson was preparing humanity's final surprise. "Dr. Peter Clark, are the primary Genesis stations ready for synchronized activation?" "Yes, Commander. All 15 stations can create a coordinated gravitational field that will encompass the entire inner solar system. Any enemy ships caught in the field will be destroyed instantly." Lisa looked at the tactical display one more time. The Corvani fleet was scattered and confused, but still dangerous. There were still over 30,000 enemy ships, more than enough to destroy Earth if they regrouped. "All stations, prepare for synchronized activation. We end this now." Quantum singularity generators throughout the solar system began to resonate together, creating a web of gravitational distortions that no ship could escape. The Corvani fleet, spread across millions of kilometers of space, found themselves trapped in a maze of twisted space-time. "Impossible!" Vex Corvani shouted as his remaining ships began to be pulled toward the artificial gravity wells. No species has technology like this, but his protests were meaningless. The human trap was complete. The Corvani Empire, masters of the galaxy for centuries, had been outmaneuvered by a species they had considered primitive. "Sir," Drac Corvani said quietly, "we need to signal surrender. We cannot fight this." Vex Corvani looked around his bridge, at the faces of his officers. For the first time in his career, he saw fear in their eyes. The invincible Corvani Empire was being defeated by humans who refused to fight by the rules. "Open a channel to the human leaders," he said finally. "Tell them we want to discuss terms." But Lisa Anderson was not ready to let the Empire off so easily. "Tell the Admiral that we'll accept nothing less than complete withdrawal from all human space. And we want to discuss reparations for the people they murdered at Proxima Station." The Empire that had come to destroy humanity was about to learn what it meant to lose a war. And across the galaxy, other species that had been conquered by the Corvani were beginning to wonder if they too could fight back against their oppressors. Battle for Earth was ending, but the war for galactic freedom was just beginning. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, Emperor Zeth Corvani sat in his throne room on the capital world of the Empire, reading reports that would have been impossible to believe just a year ago. The mighty Corvani Empire, ruler of 10,000 worlds, was falling apart. "Your Majesty," said War Prime Cast Corvani, "we have received another surrender request from the Bruton worlds. They are asking for human protection." The Emperor closed his eyes in frustration. The Brutons had been loyal subjects for 50 years, but now they were rebelling against Corvani rule. And they were not alone. Across the galaxy, species that had been conquered by the Empire were rising up, inspired by humanity's impossible victory. "What is the status of Fleet Admiral Vex Corvani?" the Emperor asked. "Still in human custody, Your Majesty. They are treating him well, but they refuse to release him until we agree to their terms." The terms were humiliating. Complete withdrawal from human space, reparations for the attack on Proxima Station, recognition of human sovereignty over there, colonies, and most insulting of all, the humans wanted the Empire to free any species that wished to leave Corvani control. "Intelligence Director Nex Corvani," the Emperor said, "how did we so completely misunderstand human capabilities?" "Your Majesty, our intelligence was accurate about their visible technology. Their ships were primitive, their weapons were basic, but they had been developing secret technologies for 50 years. We never detected them because they used methods we had never seen before." The Emperor stood up and walked to the great window that showed the capital city of his empire. For 800 years, the Corvani had ruled through superior technology and military might. But the humans had shown that intelligence and creativity could overcome even the greatest technological advantage. On Earth, President Linda Carter was meeting with representatives from dozens of species that had once been part of the Corvani Empire. The conference room was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes, all united by their desire for freedom. "The Terran Federation welcomes all species that wish to join our alliance," President Carter said. "We offer protection, trade, and most importantly, the right to govern yourselves." Captain Jake Harrison, now promoted to Admiral, stood beside her. The man who had first received the Corvani ultimatum was now helping to build a new galactic order. "Admiral Torres," President Carter said to her military commander, "what is the status of our fleet expansion? We now have over 2,000 ships." "Madam President, many are built using technology freely shared by our new allies. The Zenith Collective has been especially helpful with their engineering knowledge. The Zenith Collective had been the first species to join the Terran Federation after their liberation from Corvani rule. Their advanced manufacturing capabilities, combined with human innovation, had created the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Dr. Helen Wright, now in her 70s, but still sharp, smiled as she watched the proceedings. Her 50 years of secret preparation had not only saved humanity, but had created something greater. A federation of free species, united by the principle that no one should be forced to serve an empire against their will. Dr. Wright, President Carter said, "I believe you have something to report about our scientific cooperation programs?" "Yes, Madam President. Our research partnerships with liberated species have led to breakthrough discoveries in physics, medicine, and technology. We are learning things that no single species could have discovered alone." This was the real victory, Helen thought. Not just defeating the Corvani Empire, but proving that cooperation was stronger than conquest. The Empire had grown powerful by taking technology from others, but the Federation was becoming even more powerful by sharing knowledge freely. Admiral Murphy, formerly Captain Murphy, approached the President with a new report. "Madam President, we've received word from the Outer Rim. 3 more species have declared independence from the Empire and are requesting Federation protection." "Granted," President Carter said immediately. "Send Admiral Harrison with a protection fleet." The former Captain Harrison nodded. "Yes, ma'am. It will be good to help others gain the freedom we fought so hard to keep." Back in the Empire, Emperor Zeeth Corvani was reading the latest intelligence reports with growing despair. The Federation was not just accepting refugees from his empire. They were actively helping species rebel against Corvani rule. "Your Majesty," said War Prime Cast Corvani, "perhaps we should consider the human terms. The Empire is losing more worlds every month." "Never," the Emperor said firmly. "The Corvani Empire has ruled the galaxy for 8 centuries. We will not bow to a species that was primitive just 50 years ago." But even as he spoke, the Emperor knew that his empire was doomed. The humans had shown other species that the Corvani could be defeated, and once that fear was broken, the Empire's control could never be restored. On Earth, Commander Lisa Anderson, now General Anderson, was coordinating the final phase of Operation Starfall. The defensive operation had become an offensive campaign to liberate the entire galaxy from Corvani rule. "Status report," she requested. 15 star systems have been liberated this month," reported Colonel Ryan Hayes. "The Corvani are retreating to their core worlds, but they're losing support even there." "Any sign that they're preparing for a final battle?" "No, ma'am. Intelligence suggests that Emperor Zeeth Corvani is more concerned with keeping his remaining worlds than fighting us." "The Empire is in full retreat," Lisa smiled. The Corvani had made a fatal error when they had given Earth that final warning. They had assumed that humanity would react like all the other species they had conquered, with fear and surrender. Instead, humans had reacted with defiance and determination not 2 years after the Battle of Earth. The transformation of the galaxy was complete. The Corvani Empire still existed, but it was now just one government among many, controlling only the worlds that genuinely wanted to remain under Corvani rule. The Terran Federation had become the galaxy's new superpower, not through conquest, but through liberation. President Carter stood before the Federation Council, looking out at representatives from over 100 species. "The final warning that Earth received was supposed to be our death sentence," she said. "Instead, it became the beginning of galactic freedom." Admiral Harrison, now commanding the largest fleet in galactic history, nodded in agreement. The Empire's vast ambition was their downfall. They thought bigger was always better, but we proved that smarter is stronger. Dr. Helen Wright, now retired but still honored as the architect of humanity's victory, smiled as she watched the proceedings. The species that had once lived in fear of the Corvani Empire were now working together to explore the galaxy and make new discoveries. The Empire had wanted to absorb humanity into their vast civilization. Instead, Humanity had absorbed the Empire into something far greater, a galaxy where every species could be free to choose their own destiny. Earth's final warning had indeed been the Empire's last chance, not to destroy humanity, but to avoid destroying themselves. And in their arrogance, they had missed that chance completely. The galaxy would never be the same again.